Karl Anthony Towns and his return to Minnesota was on a different type of time. Karl Anthony Towns was not here for the play. He was not here for the jokey jokes. He was here to show everybody in the land of 10,000 lakes that you guys messed up, that you guys got rid of the wrong guy. 32 points, 20 rebounds, 6 assists on 11 of 12 shooting from the field, 5 of 5 from three-point range. And the Knicks beat the Timberwolves 133 to 107 in a good old-fashioned ass whooping. Cat was on a mission. He was on a mission and mission accomplished, right? A move that still has everybody scratching their heads, or at least everybody in Minnesota, myself included. It will continue to always baffle me how organizations make bad decisions and they, as a collective, decide to double down on that bad decision, right? Like everybody's gonna make a bad decision here and there. Okay, we get that. You see it's a bad decision. Instead of trying to course correct, you guys double down on the bad decision that you've made from the start. From the absolute start, it was evident that, hey, maybe this was a mistake getting Rudy Gobert. Maybe this wasn't the best thing that we could have done, especially when they gave up all of those assets. They gave up all those draft picks, and one of those assets was being drafting, or the guy that just drafted, in Walker Kessler. If you don't know who Walker Kessler is a 7-foot center. He plays for the Utah Jazz. The Timberwolves had drafted him, and on draft night traded him to the Jazz for Rudy Gobert in that package. And he does the exact same thing Rudy Gobert is doing, except he's doing it at a higher level, and he's doing it for $80 million less. Walker Kessler is averaging 10 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 blocks a game for the Utah Jazz this season, right? He had a really good year last year, and he had a pretty good rookie season the year before that. Go look at Rudy's numbers. Rudy's averaging 10-10 and like 1 block a game, right? We brought Rudy Gobert in to do one thing, and at times he can't even do that, which is defend the paint, block shots, and grab boards. They didn't bring you in here to score points. They didn't bring you in here to be the face of the frame. They brought you in here to grab boards and lock up the paint and be a shot blocker. That's all. That was your job. And it took the Wolves a full year to finally figure out the chemistry between their new big three when it was Ant, Cat, and now Rudy. Right? Last year it finally clicked. They got the 3 seed in the West. They knocked off the defending reigning champs, the Denver Nuggets. Things were looking good before they got walked by the Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals. And although Rudy won Defensive Player of the Year, because I get it, I already hear people saying like, "Oh, he won Defensive Player of the Year. He won his 4th." Everybody knew he didn't deserve that. Everyone knew that he didn't deserve that. They just didn't want to give it to Wemby as a rookie. Because you can't be a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year and getting absolutely manhandled, outboarded, outplayed consistently every single game, night in and night out, by Nikola Jokic. Because if that's the case, if we brought you in here, we paid you all this money, they gave you this Defensive Player of the Year award, and then you go out and do that every single game. In that case, Joe Schmo off the street could have done that. Like, he could have got dog walked by Nikola Jokic every single game. Why did we pay you all this money and bring you in to do the same? But okay, that's understandable. Joker is a top 5 center of all time, 3-time MVP. We got past them. We can live with it, right? Right. You was getting absolutely manhandled, but we can live with that. But what we can't live with is the Wolves going to play the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals, and you're getting outplayed by Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, who was a rookie. And if you're asking me, like, Vance, man, I have no idea who those 2 names are. Exactly. Exactly. Nowhere should they have been anywhere close to outplaying Rudy Gobert, and they were making him look like he was a JV player. They were looking like the Defensive Players of the Year, not Rudy Gobert in a Timberwolves jersey, right? Gobert has a nice niche. He's good at his niche. He's good at defending the paint, being tall, Sometimes he's not great at grabbing boards. Like he only had like 4 boards last night. Gobert has a great niche. Rudy Gobert is not a great basketball player. And I'll stand on that. I've seen enough. I tried to be optimistic. I've seen enough. Rudy Gobert is good at his niche. He is not a great basketball player. And I'll stand 10 toes on that sentiment. So back to Karl Anthony Towns. In the offseason, what did they do? Right? We saw what happened in the series. We saw how Rudy Gobert got outplayed. And we go into this offseason and say, hey, we're right there. We can be a contender. What do we need to do to make this T-Wolves team get to the next level? You know what they came up? You know what answer they came up with? Trading a staple of the organization, a guy who has been through it all with this team, a guy who, you know, they traded a Karl Anthony Towns for 2 guys who look like they don't even want to be here at times, right? And personally, I was never the biggest Cat fan, but you can't deny, you can't take away what he's done for this organization because it's undeniable. The way he stuck it out here through the thick and thin, I'm talking about the bad times. When Minnesota was the worst franchise in all professional sports, he was there. Never, not once requesting a trade through all the losing, through all the Jimmy Butler BS, through losing Zach LaVine and Andrew Wiggins and bringing in these guys. He never once requested a trade, never once complained. And then to unselfishly hand the keys over to Anthony Edwards, let him drive the Lamborghini and say, hey, you be the face of the organization. You lead this team because that's going to give us the best possible chance to win. Selfless. And ever since then, I'm like, hey, hats off, kudos to Cat, Minnesota Timberwolves legend, because he knew what it took to win basketball games, and he was selfless about it. He didn't care. So instead of keeping him as a staple of this organization and riding it through and being loyal to a guy that was loyal to us, instead you double down on the mistake that you made 2 years prior, and you keep the guy that we never should have gotten in the first place. It just makes zero sense. Now Cat is in New York, he's having a career year. He's absolutely balling, having a time over there in Madison Square Garden. He's averaging 25 and 14. Boy ain't never grabbed 14 boards in his life here in Minnesota, and now he's averaging 14 boards a game. The Knicks sit third in the Eastern Conference, while Minnesota sits eighth in the West. Some could argue Cat's somewhere in that MVP conversation. With the way he's been able to maneuver, the way he's been able to, like, who would have known? Honestly, we knew Cat could be the number one scoring option on a team because he was in Minnesota for so long. But it's like when Kevin Love left Minnesota, right? He left Minnesota where he was the superstar. He was the star of the show, went to Cleveland, and was like, okay, you're going to go play your role over here, which is still going to be a great player, which is going to be all-star caliber, but it's not going to be ever the Superman role that we needed you to be in Minnesota. Who would have known that Karl Anthony Towns would leave Minnesota and go over to he would leave to be Robin in Minnesota and go over to be Superman in New York with a team that already has Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, a team that was already a playoff squad last year. Good for him, man. He deserves all of it. He deserves all of it. And we gave him his props last night as he came back to Minnesota. And I might never forgive the Wolves organization for doing this. Because the moment Cat was traded, all chemistry was lost. It doesn't help now that Ant has fallen victim to this current style of NBA play. He's just absolutely taking way too many three-point shots. I'll never forgive this Wolves organization if this thing doesn't work out in the long run. Last but not least, I saw something that was interesting as I didn't watch this game. I don't think anybody watched this game. In fact, if you watch this game, you are nasty. You need help. The game of basketball is not that important to you. But the Charlotte Hornets lost to the Washington Wizards last night in a game in which literally nobody should have watched or nobody cares about because they're the 2 worst teams in the league. But the Hornets lost to the Wizards, who've only won 4 games all year round. And I only bring it up to say that LaMelo Ball's talent is being wasted in that Hornets organization. They've done nothing but stink it up since he's gotten there. But he's been doing his thing, right? This year he's averaging 37 and 5. It's hard to market a player on an abysmal franchise, right? When we look at the NBA and we look at, okay, who's going to be the next face of the league once Bron and Steph and Katie leave, and we're looking at these young stars. Why doesn't LaMelo Ball's name come up more? Probably because he plays on a shitty team, right? We've been seeing this guy hoop since high school. We saw this guy put up I don't even know. He put up 70 plus in a high school game. We've been seeing him since the time he was 15. Go play overseas, come to the NBA, do every single thing his dad said he was going to do. And I think that's the problem right there. He said the NBA saw the way that LeVar Ball just took over the sports world for about 2 years, and they said, we want nothing to do with this. Because if we put this kid at the forefront, we might see more LeVar. And while the fans and we might like that, they don't want anything to do with it. But I still, again, I don't understand why they're not trying to. I get the Hornets are terrible, but when you look at marketability, I don't know if he still is, but I remember a time where LaMelo Ball was a huge fan favorite. With the kids. He's marketable. He's a great basketball player. He can score at all 3 levels. He can do things on the court. He's a 6'7" point guard, right? He should be in that conversation more, but he's just not on a great team. So while LaMelo Ball is extremely talented, and while he's only 23, either they need to get this guy some help, or let's get him on a different team so we can see his full potential and we can see him on a bigger platform hooping at the level that he's hooping at.